You may find this hard to believe, but 60 Songs That Explain the 90s, America's favorite poorly named music podcast, is back with 30 more songs and 120 songs total. I am your host, Rob Harvilla, here to bring you more shrewd musical analysis, poignant nostalgic reveries, crude personal anecdotes, and rad special guests, all with even less restraint than usual. Join us once more on 60 Songs That Explain the 90s, starting Wednesday, May 17th, on Spotify.
This episode is brought to you by Anytime Fitness. We may talk a whole lot about sports, but when it comes to keeping fit ourselves, there's definitely room for improvement. I hit this point early July. I was just like, I am not in good enough shape. I started trying to walk at least 15,000 steps a day, or hiking, or just anything to keep my legs moving. Now it's the end of 2023. I feel great. I had a physical 3 weeks ago, and the guy was like, "You're doing great. You're doing better than you were 3 years ago." I felt great. Whatever your goals are, progress is possible thanks to Anytime Fitness. Get a personalized plan and support from an expert coach anytime, anywhere. Visit anytimefitness.com to try Anytime Fitness for free. Start to train for your life. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. See website for details. This episode is brought to you by Atlassian. Atlassian software like Jira, Confluence, and Trello help power global collaboration for all teams so they can accomplish everything that's impossible alone. Because individually we're great, but together we're so much better. Learn how to unleash the potential of your team at Atlassian.com. Atlassian.com. Atlassian. Tap the banner or visit this episode's page to learn more.
I need support staff to clear the room. Stand up and walk now.
Hello and welcome to The Watch. My name is Chris Ryan. I am an editor at TheRinger.com, and joining me in the studio, he's also a Boston sports guy. It's Andy Greenwald!
You trying to get me fired?
No, man.
Come
What's
on.
up, man? It's Thursday. By the time this goes up, I think we might be tipping off Celtics Sixers. It's been a wondrous time here at The Ringer in terms of team morale, I think.
Yeah.
Interpersonal relationships are strong.
Yeah.
It's the Missoula piece we're talking about. Andy, it's great to see you. It's great to see Kaya. We haven't been in the studio doing a regular Watch episode. Succession, it's like Succession's our wife, but the Thursday shows are our mistress,
There was so much to unpack. And also, I'm a little worried that we're just going to edit everything you just said.
Yeah.
Depending how it goes at 4:30 to 7:30 p.m. Pacific time
No.
today.
We're going to let it rock. I was in Philly last week, so we weren't in the studio. It's great to see your face. Anything going on in Hollywood you want to talk about?
It's pretty chill.
So we're probably not going to make this strike pod talk, but no. Andy is still on strike. The WGA is still on strike. It's still an evolving situation. There's still a lot of news coming out, though. I think we'll probably try and make strike talk digests as we go along. Maybe not necessarily a constant update of labor negotiation.
Well, there aren't any negotiations.
Yeah.
But I got to say, getting my steps in.
You do look lean.
I feel lean and mean.
Yeah.
I mean, there are worse things than just walking with your pals for 4 or 5 miles a day.
Yeah?
I enjoy that.
Like writing?
Oh, well, it's been a while. It's been a while. I do miss that. But also, I appreciate that so far the strike has really allowed for people to strike differently.
Have you been journaling?
And I can't comment on that without talking to Chris Kaiser and the rest of the negotiating committee.
Okay.
But it's interesting. You know what? There are two types, Chris?
Mm-hmm.
There are just two types of strikers. There's chanters and non-chanters.
And?
I think I'm not a chanter.
That's okay.
I think chanting is a younger person's game.
Do you have cool signs?
No. Oh, I did want to mention this. The biggest mistake that I made in my personal strike journey was not being there at first whistle after pens down, signs up.
Yeah.
Because the smart people got there when all the signs were blank. They got their Sharpies and they just dropped mind grapes all over them.
They emptied the pages of their rhyme book.
They did.
Yeah.
And then I get there, and now it's just a bunch of pre-written signs lined up against the fence. And, one thing about writers generally is just, we don't care. We'll hold up anybody's words. So I strike less because I'm like, that's not really my vibe.
Yeah,
well,
right.
That's not clever enough. Could I make that joke? But then I just end up grabbing the least bad option.
Gotcha.
But mostly then pivot the on strike side, because the other side is just that's not me. It's not my soul up there.
let's talk a little bit. So for today, we're going to do Barry. We're going to do the new Apple show Silo, the first 2 episodes of which are up on Apple TV. And then the third one goes up on Friday. We might do a little Top Chef. I'm dying to talk Hundo Foot Wave with you. I know you're 2 behind me, but that's the most special and important thing that's on television to me right now.
I love that show. Isn't it? It doesn't say anything good that I'm like, that's the one that makes me happy and it feeds me. And I'm not rewarding myself with it because I'm like, I gotta crush tape on all these other new premieres.
It's become now like the thing I think I look forward to the most is to watch 100 Foot Wave with my wife and just to let Philip Glass just piano tinkle me into a complete and total Zen mind state. We'll try to get Chris Smith to come on the show and talk about it, but I hope people are watching that.
I will catch up because I love it.
Before we get to Barry, two shows are ending on HBO. Barry and Succession. It's the end of an era. But when God closes a door, he opens a window. And then through the window comes Danny McBride, Steve Zahn, Shea Wiggum, Stephen Dorff, Adam Devine, everybody, John Goodman. They're all coming through the window because Righteous Gemstones is coming back. Did you see the trailer for season 3?
Yeah, I did. I feel good about it.
Yeah.
I feel the fundamentals are strong. And it's really special that those fucking lunatics are just in South Carolina, just being locavores. You know what I mean? Giving us their own terroir. Like, there's nothing about you know when like some shows come back, like Succession, like good shows and bad shows, and they're like, oh, I wonder how that show will respond to COVID. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like these are just dispatches from Danny McBride's fucking Mars, and I love it.
He's assembled a lot of my passion points.
Yeah.
Monster trucks, NASCAR, smoking, Jesus, AC/DC, and people giving each other the finger while participating in all of those activities.
And Stephen Dorff.
Yeah, and Stephen Dorff.
I mean, I can't believe you, last but not least.
I'm so excited that show is back. That's a great trailer. It's coming back in June. Did you see the Dune 2 trailer?
Yeah.
You ready for that?
Dune, like Tune. Like I feel like there's an
it's
opportunity.
Dune Part 2.
Yeah. It's not Tune. Do
you want to put like a 2 somewhere in Dune?
I kind of do.
Yeah, but I don't think it works that
coming
way.
from me?
Tune? Is that what you want to make it?
It's not good.
No.
But that was just off the dome. Like I got some free time.
I feel like this is Dune 2 : I got my Muad'Dib swagger back. It's like a lot of like worm riding and holding the knife to your head and being like, I'm the prince who was promised. Like this is jacked up.
I know better now than to bet against Denis Villeneuve.
Did you ever bet against him?
On FanDuel. I did. And I ended up calling one of those phone numbers because it did not go well for me.
KS Gambling Help?
It is kind of, I do think that I loved the first one. I loved it. It is kind of amazing that it was a success.
Given the circumstances into which it was released, which is like go to the theater at your own peril.
But also the fact that as revealed by this trailer, like all the juicy stuff is in the second movie.
Yeah.
Like Zendaya didn't really speak in the first movie.
She's in a dream in the first movie. Yeah.
And then this movie has like swagged out worm surfing and fighting and like the messianic Campbellian whatever arc that people like in these
Bald
movies.
Austin Butler.
But it also has Flossie Pugh.
Yeah.
Austin Butler in the I believe in the Sting part. Is that right?
Yeah.
Sting in the
Yeah. He's basically the big bad of this.
Is he going to be doing it in the Elvis voice?
We can only hope. He did not. I notably did not talk in this trailer.
I love it, and I'm excited for it.
Did you ever read the Dune books?
No, thank you. I have been accused of being a Dune book reader before. The truth is, do you remember
in what context?
I mean, late
Some
night.
Guys got you pinned up
Avenue
against the
A.
locker. Yeah.
Admit it. You love spice.
Fucking
I'm like, guilty as charged. Carolyn cuisine, whatever. Did your elementary school or middle school library, like, you remember school libraries, there would be, books on the wall because it was a library. But I remember that like the mass market paperbacks would be like in a little spinner rack.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah, it was also like the way like when they used to have those at like drugstores.
Sure. But I just have this very intense memory of like being in the, I guess, middle school library. It would be super weird if it was like the kindergarten library of my school. And, a couple of the books were like, Worm Children of Dune.
Yeah.
And the covers were horrifying.
It was
horrifying.
It was like two giant worms in space, like kissing.
Yes.
Or maybe that wasn't Dune.
That was your personal fanfic? That was actually the sixth grade journal that got you sent
Lady
to the principal's
Chatterley's
office.
Lover edition that I got.
But I got freaked out. So I never read any of that.
I just, you know what I think it is I'm feeling really good about movies right now. I watched this film, Artifice Girl, which I definitely don't think you should watch.
Thank you for that.
It's like sort of a sci-fi societal horror kind of film that is available for streaming. And I was like, damn, this is fucking awesome. You know, I haven't seen Guardians 3, but I've enjoyed my time at the movies this year. And then I'm so ready for Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
Are you ready for Oppenheimer?
In what way?
Like, or is it something that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I like male actors of Hollywood. I'd like to go see all of them in one movie, just like bang it out. No, I am excited.
Bang it out like nuclear fission? Bang it out? Yeah,
just like two space worms kissing in a mushroom cloud, right? With Matt Damon. No, I'm very excited for that movie.
I think it has a little bit, the trailer, I heard Sean and Amanda talking about it. They had some questions. The trailer is a little Ford versus Ferrari for what they're building, you know, little nuke. But I have a feeling like it's not going to be, the film will not be the trailer, just the way Dunkirk was not really like about hope. You know?
I am really interested in this movie because call me crazy, I like it when Chris Nolan makes movies about people and like in the world and not about giant, not moving backwards or Batman.
Sure.
I'm excited about this for that reason. I do think that the trailer kind of is giving a little bit of the theatrical game away in the sense that like Universal spent so much on this and it's just like because they saw an opportunity, because Nolan got mad at his longtime studio home Warner Brothers because when everything was being dumped on Max.
But then we got Tenet.
So it's kind of which I saw on the back of a Delta seat and really moved my soul. But like I feel like this has to be one of the great American films to justify the price tag of it. And so I think the marketing might not be in line with the movie he wanted to make.
Gotcha.
That's all I'm saying. Can I flip this to you for a second? So you're pivoting to movies, which is great for our predominantly TV.
I just thought we could just take a little Trailer Town trip.
I think that this podcast is the small picture. I think that's what we do. I wanted to let you know about a different media that all eyes are on. This is where I'm at these days.
Okay.
Which is, are you aware that tomorrow is the release of The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom?
Yeah, so this is a big deal, right?
This is a huge deal in my house.
Tears of the what? The Kingdom?
Kingdom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the sequel to Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. 29 million copies sold, Chris.
Uh-huh.
Pretty fucking amazing thing that this is the only thing that my daughters care about now. Definitely only them. I'm not, I'm agnostic. I am not counting the hours.
It does seem like
tomorrow.
Whenever I talk to you, you're like, we're just firing up some video games over here.
Let me stop you. We're firing up video game.
Okay.
Just one video game.
Have they ever seen the original like Nintendo Legend of Zelda? Like,
yeah, they look at me the way Connor Roy looks at panhandlers when I show them like, this was Legend of Zelda. They're like, oh, Dad.
Right.
That's terrible. Like one of the things that they say that I never expected to hear in a conversation is, was it 2D? Like that, they ask that a lot.
Do they understand a lot about like the visual kind of rendering of video games?
Yeah, they understand pixels and, the processing power. But it is truly, it's a fucking amazing game. I imagine the sequel is as well, because you can run around with swords and fight monsters, but also you can just bake cakes.
Oh, so it's kind of like Animal Crossing, but also a game like it has like a little bit of like a fight element to it.
Yeah, and it's also just incredibly emo in that like it's super beautiful and you can just run through the woods and run with foxes and then maybe hunt the fox if you get mad at it. It's a big deal.
It's just a different vibe than I usually look for from my video games.
Well, when do you're just still like a FIFA guy, right?
Yeah, I mean, I got Red Dead Redemption,
right,
and that was cool, but I think that like I've moved on from like my wife plays some independent like mystery games sometimes like on her iPhone and stuff.
That's fun.
But I have not played anything like where like Red Dead is probably like the last thing I've played that's like a game. I was gonna play Last of Us and then I was like, yeah, it's all right.
There's a show.
Yeah, I was just gonna get ready for it. I didn't actually literally was like, I don't really want to know what's gonna happen because I'm curious about how the show executes. And then I'll just never recapture the feeling of like smoking Camel Lights and playing Max Payne in my apartment. You know, that's just. Like,
I think for your long-term heart health, that's probably good that you can't.
Do you
go back
remember
to
the part of Max Payne where your character is in a dark room trying to find the sound of a baby?
No, I do. But you want to like set the scene, like when you say "find the sound of a baby,"
Max
that's
Payne
oddly
is like
passive
you're
voice.
like you basically play like a vigilante cop in Max Payne. So
also,
I don't know.
it's a pun, like the name, right?
Like there's maximum pain experienced by this guy because I think his family has been killed in the beginning of it, right?
Right, but yet there's a sound of a baby.
Well, he's being haunted by it. So
Yeah.
you're in this dark room, and like the goal of the level is to find where the sound is coming from.
Yeah,
We didn't have great sound speaker setups back in 2002.
No.
You know, so I was just like sitting in Brooklyn. You know,
all the windows open.
yeah, I got a burner in my mouth, and I'm trying to find this baby, and like. I basically gave up on video games after that.
Because you were haunted by the baby, or because you never found it?
I never found it, honestly. I think I went to IGN, like where I bought like a GameStop magazine and figured out what the cheat code was.
Where's the baby?
The baby code.
This doesn't seem, again, like this.
Maybe I was never meant for fatherhood.
There's a lot of things from that era where we were just like, I guess this is what being in your 20s is like. And you look back on it now and I'm like, oh, that's real bad.
It's dark.
Like that's toxic shit.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Do you know it's also toxic?
Yeah.
Barry.
Okay, you win. I was going to be like, Chris, I found 2 babies. And now we will rid Hyrule of Ganon.
Let's talk a little bit about Barry. This show has sort of gotten short shrift from us because we dedicate the Sunday show to Succession, and then Thursdays are usually a grab bag, and we've been traveling. So we haven't really gotten to check in very much on what is, whether you love it, whether you don't love it, you have to acknowledge is one of the most audacious final seasons of a television show that I can remember.
Who's not loving it? Bring him in here.
So give me your feelings on it. So for people that are not current on Barry, we're going to be spoiling up to this most recent episode that aired on Sunday, which was 3, 2, 1, a spoiler. It was a time jump episode.
Yep.
Time jump happened in the episodes previous to this.
This was episode 5.
We get a
Legacies.
peek at Sally and Barry's life later in life.
8 years.
8 years, and they have a son. And for a second, maybe you're like, "Oh, is this a dream sequence or something?" But in fact, it is. It is like that we've jumped ahead in time. And this episode put me in my darkest place.
Back in those Max Payne days.
Yeah, I was looking for the baby, if you know what I mean. It's interesting to watch this show and Succession end and watch the way their creators are interacting with their creations as they wrap things up. I don't think either show is traditional in the sense of like when you were watching Breaking Bad come to a conclusion, there was the overriding feeling that there were certain thematic things that needed to happen, but there was also a tremendous amount of affection that the creators had for their creations. And that's possibly why Better Call Saul started, is because they didn't want to leave this world. And there were people that they wanted to interact with. And it was just like, you know, Jesse was going to need to have the ending that he needed to have because we had all grown to love him so much and feel for him. And I do not get that feeling from Barry.
No, nor do you get it when you hear Bill Hader, whether he's talking to our buddy Sean or just in the press. I mean, he stopped doing press as part of the writer's strike, but when he was doing press, he does not have a lot of empathy he has empathy as a performer and a creator, but he does not have a lot of, well, actually, Barry is the misunderstood hero of his own story about his character, about his creation.
I think the thing that really got me about this episode was the Sally part, the Sally piece. It was...
She wasn't ready to coach the team. A rookie head coach. The problem with Sally is when Will Hardy got poached. Look, we all liked the idea of it, but she wasn't ready.
The transformation of what happens to Sally, and having not seen any subsequent episodes yet, like I don't know where this is going. And obviously at the end of the episode that aired on Sunday, Clark turns back into Barry and he's like, I have to go kill Gene Cousineau, who has now appeared at Warner Brothers and is trying to involve himself in the film about the events of Barry. But the episode of Sally interacting, like being in, where are they supposed to be? Do we have a sense of like what state they're in?
It doesn't really say. I thought it was
Oklahoma because Bill's from Oklahoma.
Yeah, or it was Nevada or something. Yeah, but then there's she's
got a southern
accent, so we don't really know.
Either way, there's not a ton of trees where they are.
No, it's a little flat.
And the idea that this person is still performing, like that she is like working on a character and that she is playing a character all day long, but then that she is also like turned into a full-blown alcoholic because of what her life has become. And she's with this guy who is also doing the same thing he was doing at the beginning of this show, which is disassociating to the point where he can just be like, I'm just a working actor now. Like, that's what I'm doing. And I don't know. I think it's astonishing. Like, obviously the filmmaking is just kind of like on another level for television, but I can't remember being in the throes of something like this and be like, I have absolutely no idea where the show is going.
I mean, I think the audacity of this show is jaw-dropping. And I think that the aesthetics of the show are astonishing. I don't want to like, I know I threw like a loose heater last week where I was like, this is the best show on television.
Yeah, you did.
I did. And I kind of stand by it, but I want to explain a little bit more. Like look,
Just words.
The movie theater's on fire. Okay. So I brought some marshmallows. In a way, this feels to me like the dream of what the last decade was supposed to give us from television.
Yeah.
In a lot of different ways. And what I mean specifically is this is Auteurist television. This is Bill Hader creating a character and then an ensemble of characters and then a world and then eventually taking over and directing it so that the aesthetics are completely aligned and coming from his mind. As a fan of people figuring out their own creativity, it is so exhilarating to watch the show because, you know, I think it was after the first season, we had, like, Bill and Henry Winkler came on this pod. And, you know, anyone who, we don't know him more than that one interaction, but people who have talked about him or heard him talk, like, he's an extremely modest person, but he is a hardcore film guy. And he saw this not as an opportunity to just, like, to make money or extend his celebrity, but to all of the little things that were itching in his mind, like how far can he scratch them?
Well, he had said that he wanted to make movies and he didn't think anybody would let him make a movie.
Yeah.
So he started making this TV shows so that he could eventually direct enough so that he could make movies.
And it's
not that it's as simple as that, but I mean,
no, but what he's doing with it is more than a stepping stone towards movies. It is a absolute celebration of this strange, prestige-y, maybe already past moment when TV could become something not better than movies, not replacing movies, but an extension of a cinematic point of view, right? Where you could infuse long-term character work with the stakes, with the bold choices, with the artistic decision-making of movies, of cinema. And I was thinking a lot also about, like, think about where this fucking show began, where what we were raving about was how funny it was.
Yeah.
Darkly funny, but also savage in its satire of a particularly pompous balloon known as Hollywood and acting, and also not acting in the sort of noble sense, but acting in the, I don't have any money, but I'm going to give all my money to someone who's going to tell me how to become famous.
Right.
I'm going to do monologues based on movies to get into movies because that'll fix me. Not necessarily with judgment, but with, like, this is a thing. This is absolutely a thing. And it's a way for people to escape who they are, who they think they are, or what they don't want to deal with. And I'm thinking about, like, great shows of the last 10 years and, like, what their attitude towards change and pushing things forward. And I would always, especially in the half-hour space, celebrate one of the all-time greats, Parks and Rec, being like, you know what? Mike Schur never took his foot off the gas. Like, it always kept, first she was going to be on city council, then she's off of it. And he was just like, he wouldn't just let it rest because life doesn't work like that. And he also wanted to see
I mean,
how...
like, it could have been like what Mr. Mayor was.
Yes.
You know, which is also a really good show and very funny. But it was like, he's the mayor and he's never in trouble.
It's a situation.
And
here's
it's like,
the comedy.
But Mayor, Parks and Rec was what would happen if you, like, flipped this show 3 or 4 times. And then obviously that was something that was really appealing to him because of what he did with Good Place.
And this, yes. And this, so it was about, like, we believe in what we've created here and let's see how elastic it really is. We're going to stretch it and stretch it. The thing that he's done here, we're so far past that opening convention, but it's so true to what it always was in a way that the conversations that this show should be in terms of its, like, emotional storytelling and morality are more aligned with Breaking Bad and The Sopranos, honestly, because this show is at root about the pervasive corrosiveness of violence. And this idea that even we as like TV watchers or comedy fans are like, oh, well, it's going to be silly when the killer goes into an audition.
Yeah.
Every single thing this man, Barry, touches is ruined because of the violence in him and the unexamined trauma in him. And that's just been the fucking guiding principle of a show that is still often the funniest thing week to week. I know I've just been monologuing, and it's weird to end a monologue by saying I don't have words for it, but I kind of don't have words for it.
Because I think that your point, though, about this like dream of what TV could be, what would you say if you had to say, like, over the course of the last 10 years when we've been doing this together, what would be another moment where you were like, the ground is shifting, like this is something truly fresh and unique and original, and like this is the kind of thing that you would hope to see in cinemas, like when you were in the 60s or the 70s or in independent cinema in the 90s, and now we're getting it on a week-to-week basis in Fleabag, like Atlanta? Like, what are you thinking when you're thinking about...
those two are the last kind of like, and I think they actually premiered the same year as Barry. Like, I think those were... That was at 2018 or something. Like that, there was a pretty thrilling moment.
Well, it was also like a weird moment where I think, despite the success of things like Game of Thrones, there was a real lionization of like the creator and of like,
which I
we
think
want to be in business with this person who seems to have a very distinct vision, and it kind of, you know.
And you know, I don't want to go down that path of like overrating. I think TV, just broad strokes, isn't this. You know, because when you hitch your wagon to one incredibly creative engine, you're going to get one very specific story that often has a...
I think when we talk about Silo, we'll be talking about something that's a lot more like a traditional TV show.
Very different than this. Yeah. I think that those two are the best comps for like, oh, this is, oh my God, like month to month, let alone year to year, we could get something that feels absolutely new. I still, you know, when we were doing the best stuff for last year, and even the year before, like Reservation Dogs is still so high up on every list that I do. And I think about it constantly just because it again, it's just like, I'm going to show you something entirely new. I know what it is, and you're going to get it. You're going to get what this place is, what it feels like, what it smells like, who's here, why it's funny, even though it feels terrible, or vice versa. I love that kind of thing. But I wouldn't compare it to what Barry is because Barry is just week to week the most cinematic show now, I think. And it's not just the consistency of what Hader's doing, it's his choices he's making. Like the way he shot the scene, the botched assassination scene by two podcasters, I might add, was absolutely thrilling and uncomfortable and surprising. The way he moves the camera, where he does these sweeps, right, where it's like on someone's face and they say, what? Or, you know, it swings to the other side. The way he is still laughing.
Then they also do like lampoon that kind of stuff, like when Hank and Cristobal are doing this speech at the round table
unreal.
At Dave & Buster's, and they keep having to run to catch up with the camera.
I mean, I think this show, I think it was the beginning of the third season when we were podcasting about it. And it had been a very long time off the air due to COVID.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know. The rhythm is off to me. And I was wrong. I just needed a few rotations to like get into the groove of it. And the very specific choices that Hader makes week to week on the show about what's funny and what's horrific and sometimes it's the opposite of what you'd expect, feels more real and true to me, you know, than more quote unquote realistic shows.
Yeah.
Because it is so, this is the anti-AI show in every way.
Well, one of the things that I've noticed, I think as like TV media kind of consolidates around, you know, a half a dozen to 20 shows a year that it covers very, very passionately and very, very deeply, is that those shows sometimes inevitably have a self-awareness of what people say about it. I think this is happening to Ted Lasso to some extent, where it's like there's just like an obvious like awareness of why people are coming to watch this show, what we're pushing against, how we acknowledge what the core beliefs of this show are or whatever. And it almost feels like it's like what's happening as far as plot on Ted Lasso is sort of secondary to what Ted Lasso, the show, believes in about the world, you know?
It's mission. It's you're right.
And I think you could say that that's even happened to Succession. You know what I mean? To some extent, where I think like there is certainly a feeling of like Succession knows what it does well, and it knows what people respond to in its show.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the things that, I mean, it's definitely like doing something at a very high level. I'm not suggesting it's like playing the hits.
Not
right?
to interrupt you, but I also think that there's something that is essentially TV about that in the best possible way, which is, my God, people love it when Tom and Greg are roasting each other.
Yeah.
And also, we love writing for it. It gives everyone involved pleasure. That's not wrong.
Yeah.
That is the lifeblood of TV.
So with Barry, it's almost like I was thinking about this because of the title card, right? You know, when they cut and it's just like the red lettering Barry. And when the early seasons, I'd have to go back to actually do like an accounting of this, but I felt like more often than not, it would cut to the title card and usually it would have some like ironic music playing.
It was the horns.
Yeah. And it would be almost like, that's Barry. It was almost like a sitcom, you know what I mean? And it had like a kind of like comedic, humorous bent to it. And now when Barry flashes on the screen, the title card, it's like, welcome to The Shining.
It's a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
And there is so much despair and distress and humanity in Sarah Goldberg's performance as Sally, you know. And there is an incredible artistic economy to the way that the show communicates it. It is masterful in the half hour. You know, it's interesting, I think, that the three shows we mentioned as being the most elastic and the most exciting and the most like aesthetically engaging are all half hours. Because you can't, and Reservation Dogs, so 4 shows, you can't relax. You don't know what it's going to be. It feels weird. You know, it's like, who put this tragedy in my comedy and vice versa? There's something, but that it also forces them to make these, doesn't force them, it allows them the chance to make these wild swings and land them, right? Like, to get Sally in one episode from being back home with her family to being back in LA to becoming Gene Cousineau to realizing that the only time she's ever felt quiet in one part of her brain was when an absolute psychopath had a gun pointed in the direction of whoever was coming toward her.
Yeah.
It's balletic to get there. And it's fucking bold as shit.
And then to realize that the two of them have wound up in hell.
And a hell that they were always already in.
Yeah.
And that their arrangement wasn't love, but was recognition.
Right.
And so we end up in this time jump. And so we could talk specifically about it. I mean, I thought the week before It Takes a Psycho, which now, once you saw the time jump, was kind of a finale of that moment. And what it did with Hank and Cristobal and the transfer. I mean, Anthony Corrigan's performance alone, like, that should be the headline.
Yeah, I think that
the
achievement of that Hank character is essentially the achievement of Barry, is to take something that's so blatantly comic
and broad
and seems almost like kind of like a writer's room kind of like, you know what would be funny is if this guy, you know, like, and to have that and to consistently like keep up like all of the battles between the Colombians and the Chechens over the years and like the sort of North Hollywood crime underworld like is somehow still part of it, and like this whole sand plot that culminates with this like stunning assassination
and through Cristobal's the auditory POV, right? It's horrifying. I mean, comedy is the most subjective thing of all, right? This is not an original idea, but we have now, like, someone put the Spinal Tap into Hader, and this is everything of who he is and what made him, right? Of growing up in a kind of strange, I don't mean it pejoratively, but unexpected place. It's not our experience, right? Growing up in Oklahoma, being a film kid, and then and having stage fright, and then being one of the funniest and best impressionists of a generation, and one of the most essential SNL players. It's clear that in his life as a complete person, comedy and silliness is inextricable from drama and tragedy, right? And like into the heavier things. And so we're just getting this raw download of that week to week. It's really moving just on a human level, I think, but then it's just incredible that he makes these decisions that you are powerless to stop. So that moment at the end of episode 4, when, as you said, like, is this a dream? I still think there were probably maybe people listening to this podcast who were like, well, they're going to undo that, right? Like, it wasn't really a time jump.
Yeah, I mean, and in some ways, her calling out his name Barry in the house and him immediately switching from this like
in 5,
because in some ways, like, what he's doing in that episode is like he's more committed to the role than Sally is. You know, like, he's transformed into this guy Clark. He's like, and he is essentially controlling like the world, you know, and he's deciding what his son is going to learn, and he's deciding what his son's going to do, and he's teaching him these things that he wishes somebody had taught him.
It's so dark, though.
It's so fucked up.
The kid thing I want to touch on too, and this is what made 5 was a really gnarly watch for a lot of reasons, even though it also had comedy in it because it's still Barry.
The little kid breaks his neck playing Little League.
Like that whole montage that they made of horrific, fatal Little League injuries. I feel like they thought that was really funny.
I think it's really
funny. And it is funny.
Yeah.
But it's also fucked. But there's a thing like, again, I'm sorry, I'm yelling fire in the crowded theater. Many things can be good at the same time in a lot of different ways. And we are
this is your thing now. But you fucking love something or you hate it. It's okay.
I love a lot of things. I'm going to compare it to something that I love, which is Succession. But even Succession, for all of it gets out way in front of its skis with some of the emotional stuff and figures it out. Finishes the slalom. I shouldn't have done a ski metaphor.
The run.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You've been to the Alps?
I've never skied before, but I do watch the Winter Olympics.
Okay,
yeah.
More than I do.
Well, Alberto Tamba. You know?
I played the Winter Olympics on the Commodore 64. Remember that?
I do.
Succession keeps the emotional violence centered in the adult children, right? Like Kendall's kids aren't on screen that much.
No.
And so, because if they were, every episode would actually be a referendum on what he's doing to them. And it allows us to live in his space of like, I'm a hero, I'm not touching them or whatever. Barry's not doing that.
Nope.
Not only...
No, Barry and Sally chose to have a child.
And absolutely codify their rancid, fucked up thing.
Yeah.
And he's just a boy named John who wants to play baseball, who has grown up in this place with his parents lying about everything and sometimes sleeping in the bathtub.
Yeah.
You can't look away from that. And the show doesn't ask you to look away from it. This is a show where the previous episode where Gene Cousineau shot his son. And we don't know how that resolved.
Yeah. All we know is that Gene Cousineau left the country for 8 years.
He was bringing him Coral Tree Cafe and he shot him, right? Like, I just saying that, like, many, many shows of this generation of like, we can do anything on TV. We can be bold storytellers and risk takers. They come right up to the precipice of being like, violence corrodes and corrupts everything, even blameless children. But then it's just like, but we're not really going to tell you that story because we also want you to root for Walter White.
Yeah.
We want to have it both ways a little bit. We're not going to really focus on what the next decade's going to be like for Walt Jr. after the show, right?
Right.
They're very different.
Tough Google, you know?
Barry's doing it.
Yeah.
Barry's doing it. And you can't look away.
Two things I think that really like just pile drived me into concrete were Barry and Sally both on their laptops with their headphones on.
Every night.
And her watching her Nemesis's show and watch her like go to the White House and become this huge star, Darcy Carden. And Barry getting red pilled about Abraham Lincoln and
That's amazing.
Gandhi and stuff. And just the two of them with like in this living room with their laptops on their laps. Yeah. And then also... would it have been different if Sally was playing like a mystery game on her iPhone? And you were just Googling like Max Payne Baby Solve? I was like Joe Mazzulla rotations. And then Sally drinking a quart of vodka while on the phone with Barry about what he taught her child that day.
Hey, what do you guys want for dinner? Dude. I also think, and there are these little things that...
Those things that really got to me.
The show can be more than one thing. And it's like, it's about how silly acting is. But then also, the project of Barry is about Bill Hader being like, I fucking love these performers. And I'm going to give them these opportunities to do things
because it would have been
possible.
possible. They could have tried to do what I think it could have tried to My Blue Heaven it, where it's just like Barry and Sally have a white picket fence and like he's a respected man of the community and she's, the PTA leader. And it's like, no, like these two people come out of their experience and find themselves literally in like a desert of their own making.
Yeah, because the emotional valence of the show is always true. Do criminal underlords and overlords meet at Dave & Buster's? And like, you know what? I can't say.
Sure.
Just like Conor Roy, North Korea, we don't know. We don't know.
We just don't know.
We just don't know. But is this the way people behave to each other and where they end up? Yeah. And what I mean about the performances is that what he does respect is Sarah Goldberg, right? And like she can do this all the way through. He's not playing faves with Barry. You know what I mean? Like that Barry's somehow okay. He's seeing that through. And what he's doing for Stephen Root, what he's doing for Robert Wisdom, what he's doing for Briar Patch alum Charles Parnell in a great post-Top Gun cameo role. You know, Anthony Corrigan, like he loves these actors.
Yes.
And
Spencer Grenese, who's the guy who plays Bevel.
Yeah.
In the diner.
Amazing.
Yeah. What a get.
What a get for all of them. He loves these actors and he's giving them these chances. And I don't know. You know what, Chris? I support the project. It's got my full-throated endorsement.
How many more episodes are left of Barry? 3?
I believe there are 3.
Okay.
There are 3.
This episode is brought to you by Mint Mobile. New Year's resolutions are fun the first couple of weeks. Then you kind of maybe conveniently forget about them halfway through January. No shame. It happens to us all. But this year I have a foolproof plan, at least when it comes to saving money. Just switch to Mint Mobile and you're done. Goal accomplished. Because for a limited time, their wireless plans are $15 a month when you buy a 3-month plan. The great thing about Mint Mobile is there's no jaw-dropping monthly bills or unexpected overages, and all plans come with unlimited talk and text. Get this new customer offer today at mintmobile.com/watch. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. You might say all kinds of stuff when things go wrong, but these are the words you really need to remember. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. They've got options to fit your unique insurance needs, meaning you can talk to your agent to choose the coverage you need. Have coverage options to protect the things you value most. File a claim right on the State Farm mobile app and even reach a real person when you need to talk to someone. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Why is it that with sparkling water, I'm always playing guessing games with what flavor I'm drinking? Is it citrus? Is it aluminum can flavored? Not sure. Sparkling ice, though, they really mean flavor. Like in-your-face flavor. Orange mango, black raspberry. Don't even get me started on the strawberry lemonade. Kiwi Strawberry slid right into my taste buds DMs last night and let them know who's boss. No subtleties there, and no sugar either. But it does have vitamins and antioxidants. Find sparkling ice at a major grocery store or club retailer near you. Sparkling ice. Anything but subtle.
If you went on a road trip and you didn't stop for a Big Mac or drop a crispy fry between the car seats or use your McDonald's bag as a placemat, then that wasn't a road trip. It was just a really long drive. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
At participating McDonald's.
Do you want to talk about the show Silo on Apple Television Plus?
I do.
Okay. This is a show that I recommended to Andy. So it comes from Graham Yost, who is a hugely acclaimed and accomplished showrunner, creator who worked notably for me on Justified.
He worked for you on Justified?
No, he worked notably to me. He worked on Justified, which is one of my favorite shows.
I preferred the other version, but continue. He also wrote Speed.
Yes, yeah,
that's a cool look.
He's got some credits.
Can you imagine if you just walked around town in the 90s
and they're
just
like, what do you do?
I wrote Speed.
Yeah.
It's like, it's better than I saved Latin. It's incredible.
So this is a show based on a novel by Hugh Howley. I think it's a series. The first book of the book that this is based on is called Wool. It's directed, or at least the first few are directed by Martin Tildum, who did Theory of Everything, I believe.
Imitation Game?
My bad.
And Passengers?
Passengers. Tough hang.
Do you see that movie?
No one did.
Great call.
But no disrespect, things happen. And so this is a show about however many years in the future, it's a little bit unclear. Society lives underground in a giant silo.
We don't know if it's all society.
We do not.
There is a society.
A society lives underground.
If I may, we do not know who built the silo.
We don't. And we don't know what's wrong outside of the silo because what they've got is a couple of windows into what looks like a kind of nuclear wasteland. And the idea is there's some rules baked into the old silo, and we're going to talk about the first 2 episodes now. So spoilers for that if you haven't seen it. But essentially, it's a very clockwork, everything is sort of well-run society because there are these rules that everybody has to follow. It's a vertical kind of
that always goes
habitat where it's essentially like a giant stairwell with these levels. And you've got porters running up and down the stairs.
Guess where the lower class people live?
In the bottom. Class.
Yeah.
And yeah, essentially the thing to know is that if you say you want to go outside of the silo, if you say you want to leave the silo, your decision must be honored. and there is like a ritual that you go through where you can clean the cameras so that it can continue to see outside. But there is a small like rung of this society where that sort of starts to question, like, why are we down here? What is outside? What happened before? And trying to sort of put together a collective memory.
One of the best details of the show is that those who do choose to go outside and clean, this is like must-see TV for everyone. Everyone watches them go.
Yeah, they get together.
And then all of a sudden
Sunday
their
Night
image
Football.
gets better of the sort of cracked Cormac McCarthy wasteland outside. And then they all watch whoever that person is take a few stumbling steps and then collapse.
Yes.
And then they watch their bodies just lie there for the rest of eternity.
Yeah. So I would say one of the things that is notable about this series is that in 2 episodes, it essentially has 3 stars. It has 3 main characters.
And 3 starts as well.
Yeah. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Well, objectively, it's doing some interesting and challenging things.
Yeah.
It is trying to do... On one hand, you could feel like the pitch for this show was very much pivoting off of Lost, in that what if whole show was Hatch?
Mm-hmm.
It is also trying to accomplish something that was challenging in a pre-streaming prestige era, which is sell you on an entire world and then also some characters.
Mm-hmm.
So that the show begins with David Oyelowo as the sheriff of the silo. The story, it begins with him in, I don't know if it's the present, but it begins with him saying he would like to go outside. We then flash back to 2 years previously, and we track the last year of his life with his wife, played by Rashida Jones. We learn that birth control in children are regulated, and that they've been given permission to have 1 year to try to have a baby. They are unsuccessful. This sparks some of her own suspicions about everything and ends up with her leaving.
Yep.
Someone she crosses paths with dies.
Mm-hmm.
And we're introduced to, this is sort of in the third timeline now, the interregnum, the 2 years between Rashida leaving and David leaving, Sheriff leaving. We're introduced to Rebecca Ferguson, the third star of the show, as a super buff engineer who has a story to tell maybe about what goes on down below, and the IT guy or computer guy who fell to his death. So it is a massive world building. It's
2 hours to get to Rebecca Ferguson is the star of the show and the hero of the show. And she plays somebody named Juliet.
Right.
And it takes 2 episodes to sort of like fully kind of become her show. And I would say that the reason why I wanted to talk to you about this show is that I think one of the things that we bump up against when we have huge world building, sci-fi leaning or fantasy leaning shows that we don't often like go down is because to talk about them on an episode to episode basis, you got to get like really, really, really in the weeds, because this is a very like plot heavy show, right? And it's also like a mystery box show because there are certain questions that the show characters do know the answers to, but we have not found out yet. And then there are questions that the characters don't know the answers to that we also haven't found out yet. So there's a lot of like, when are they going to find out the inevitable reveal of like, what's the silo? Where are they? When are they? What's, who are the people in the judicial committee that seem to be controlling what they can and can't do? So we don't typically talk about shows like this. One of the other reasons why I think it is that there's like, I love going back to this over and over again, so forgive me, but it's this, Seth Rogen story that he tells on this show called Off Camera with Sam Jones. Sam directed the Jason Isbell doc that we did with HBO. And Seth Rogen's telling him about the writing of Superbad, and he's telling him about tips that he got from like Amy Pascal and Robert Towne about screenwriting. And it was basically, you give people plot, but what you to bring them in, but what you're really doing is telling them story. And like plot would be all the mechanics of this story, like the little narrative steps that Andy and I just talked about. The story would be, these people who find out that like everything that they're being told is a lie, and what they need to do is like think for themselves and take this huge leap of faith. Now, I don't necessarily find the story that like particularly compelling. It's like something that we've seen different parts of, but every once in a while with one of these shows, the plot just gets me. Like the plot just gets to me, and I'm like, I gotta find out what's up with the silo. And I think part of the reason why I'm bought in on this is it takes 2 hours to get to this. Rebecca Ferguson is awesome.
She's always awesome.
Now, most people know her mostly from Mission Impossible, And that's why it's really cool to see her essentially by the end of the second episode become the sheriff of the silo.
Well, Dune, people know her from too.
Yeah, and Dune,
She's really
right.
good in Dune.
Yeah. But it's a central performance that just takes a couple of hours to become central. And I think that is a classic TV problem right now where it's like 10 minutes of banter at the top of a podcast. It's like you could just sell us, and I'm not casting the stones, but it's like if you just started with Sheriff Rebecca Ferguson,
yes,
it would be pretty cool.
There's so much work, so much digging to get to the core of the thing that's interesting here. We're not starting with one person's struggle or we're starting with this happened, but before that, this happened. But what you really need to know about what happened to him was this. And then underneath all of that,
where does that
story.
compulsion come from? Do you think it's because it's adapting a novel and novels obviously are expansive?
I think that there is an over-reliance on underlying art IP and a slavish devotion to that. I think that there is a type of world building that is possible in expansive multi-volume book series that does not really work with television, despite what people think it's being a one-to-one. We can just mine this, for sure. I also think that, broadly speaking, and I want to double down on that, like there are exceptions to this. Apple, as a content maker and studio, is making a ton of stuff. And some of it we think is great, like Slow Horses, which is also an adaptation of a book series. Some of it is interesting, some of it is fine. But if you could extrapolate one thing, not extrapolations, if you could extrapolate one thing from what they seem to be in what their business seems to be, it does seem to be world creation. I wonder if that flatters the company ethos in a way.
Sure.
That like Apple is a paradigm shifter. We will take you places with our technology, or if it has to do with, and I want to be clear, I'm 100% speaking out of my ass here. This is just speculating. I don't know. I've not worked with them. That the heads of Apple, of the studio that makes the content, of the service, were the heads of a seller of Sony as a studio. And so a lot of their projects really do seem to be logline pitch heavy. Here are the actors that are going to take you to a world you've never seen before, and we're going to go to the ends of space and the ends of time to tell you what is Foundation.
Yeah, right.
Okay. But then someone has to get in under the hood and make a show out of that big swing, big idea. The common thread to me between Foundation and Invasion and Extrapolations, even to a degree, and Severance, even, which obviously is a very successful program, and this, are that they are enormously top-heavy. They are enormously devoted to world building and production design, and to varying degrees have left me wanting on a very core human level, which is, boy, Rebecca Ferguson lives in a weird world. Let her tell me about it.
Right.
Don't lecture me. Show me. And that was really my
Severance
my
is another
frustration
example of a show of a plot versus story show where I actually prefer the plot. Or like I know what like the sort of overarching themes of Severance are, and like the idea of like separating your brain from like these two different parts of your life. But I actually really just want to know what's up with the goats.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I think one of the things that will be interesting for me in season 2 is, what is the show interested in? What is Ben Stiller and Dan Erickson and even Adam Scott? What are they interested in? And season 2 will be the put up or shut up in a way of like, okay, you certainly got our attention and you did some beautiful, memorable stuff. But where are we going with it? And this one, there are other elements that kind of it's not bum me out, because I think this is not a bad show. We should have said that at the beginning.
I just want to say, so I don't like doing this, but I watched the third episode, and the third episode is good.
Yeah, the ideas are good. The people are good. Like. But there are elements that I bumped on. The biggest being that absolute computer normie pulling Rebecca Ferguson. Like, I know society's collapsed, but like, come on, I'm not buying. I'm out.
Yeah,
I bumped on that.
Do you have any shows? Because this, what it kind of reminds me of is the way I was honestly obsessed with Battlestar when it was on, the Ronald Moore Battlestar Galactica.
Talk about that.
Do you have any shows over the years that you're like, I'm just like really here for like the core story that is being told and not like what it means to TV or what it's trying to say about life or whatever? It's just like, I only care about the mechanics of what's happening.
Yeah. The League.
I love you.
I mean, I absolutely know what you mean. I can't off the top of my head, because I think that I'm spoiled. Like my brain immediately went to things
Americans
that did both.
The Americans?
No, because what for me, when I was reviewing that show, I thought it was interesting about marriage.
Yeah.
Like it was.
So you did like the story.
I did like the story, but it was the emotional. The story was just the frame.
No, the story is the marriage. The plot is the spies. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but that was get you someone who can do both.
Sure.
And Lost for me was that too. But Lost built up.
I love a role player. You know what I mean? I love a corner 3 guy. What can I say?
PJ Tucker.
Yeah.
The thing that I bumped on with this was that there are elements of this presentation that felt so of just where we are with TV right now. Like nothing about the show is AI. I'm sorry, it's the hot thing to say, but like the casting did feel like, hey, ChatGPT, who are the most famous people we could get for these parts that will accept this salary and these shooting conditions?
Mm-hmm.
David Oyelowo, a really good actor. Rashida Jones, a really great actor and like lovely presence and gives you something different, a warmth, which I think is what they were going for. Objectively, for me, they have no chemistry. And I did not buy an episode devoted to them just boning all the time in pursuit of a baby. Like I didn't buy it. I didn't feel their connection as performers.
Yeah.
That is something that can happen in casting. You can work around it. But similarly, Tim Robbins and Common are on this show. You know who's the person who popped on the show other than Rebecca Ferguson is Will Patton.
Yeah.
Playing a deputy. I'm like, that guy has lived in a place.
Sure.
And I am interested in the place that made him that way. It's not, here are some famous people fronting these archetypes. That is an issue. Similarly, it's a dystopia, so everyone's wearing beige and kind of humorless.
But it's not a dystopia because everybody is sort of present and accounted for and taken care of. You know what I mean? Like there's some elements of it where I think I like the fact that it is, as of so far, even though there's some judicial is listening to you and this is happening and this is happening, it's for the most part it's about the human desire to know rather than it is about fighting oppression.
I agree with you. And I think that I'm sympathetic. I think I'm aligned with you just coming at it from a different place, which is, once again, the pressures on a project like this to communicate so fucking much leaves no air and no real estate to do the things that, I'm more interested in personally as a viewer. But I think that probably the creatives are interested in. There's no room yet for it to be weird or specific or surprising, or for a character to just be doing something to be zagging instead of zigging towards plot.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm interested in the idea that the 3rd episode will give you more of that, and ultimately in the fact that Apple, because this is all a lark, will give you the space.
Yeah.
So this could be, I think we should hit this harder. This could be a very different show in episodes 6, 7, 8, 9, or season 2. There's a lot of source material and there's a lot of goodwill and good talent behind it. But I did want to talk about it because it does feel like a very 2023 type of thing.
Yeah, I got to find out what this fucking silo is, man.
Hey, from what I gather,
I'll let you know.
No one knows who built it. You know what I mean? Also, there's a little, speaking of, there's one thing that I wondered if you were going to bump on, which is there's a little unfrozen caveman lawyer.
Well, there's a bunch of they understand how to do certain things, and then they'll be like, this Pez dispenser, what is this?
Or they have computers that are all like the same Apple IIc that I had in elementary school when I wasn't reading Dune. But then they'll be like, this machine device with a lens. Well, this can't be like what we're looking at the dystopia through.
Right.
What is this box? I'm just a man in a silo. Okay.
Before we go,
do you think, would you like to live in a place where there was just a buffet breakfast every morning? It did remind me of being on production.
Well, it's funny you should mention that. I think that when I'm at a hotel, and they offer that, and I'm like, it's go time for me.
Yeah,
I love a continental breakfast.
Are you like Hugo on Succession? Do you just load up with the Cinnabons?
No, I go and I get granola yogurt and a banana and a coffee, and I'm like
$45
slingshot out of but if it's included,
sure.
I love that.
I mean, the best thing about making a television show is that every morning when you get to work, there's just tents of food. And you'd be like, I would like breakfast tacos, please. And they were like, certainly.
That's amazing.
That is really why we got to get back to work and hash this out. I've had a breakfast taco in years.
Can you get that on the sign?
It's luckily for the guild, the signs are all written.
We should go. But I want to talk about Top Chef for a second.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So this is going out on Thursday. So the subsequent episode of Top Chef, the episode after Restaurant Wars, will have aired tonight. I have not seen it.
I have not either.
But we may have to get Kaya involved here because I think we have a lot of opinions in here.
Yeah.
This has been a time of great iteration for game shows and for reality competition shows.
Okay.
I'm having a lot of problems with Survivor this season.
You've been alluding to this.
Part of it is that I feel like there's a lot of people on Survivor that are Survivor experts now, and they've watched 25 seasons. They know all of the challenges. They've practiced them. There's a kid on this show who builds 3D models of puzzles that he's going to need to be solving. Like he's like a NASA student or something, or a NASA kid. And I just feel like they've kind of like, they have to keep changing the show to keep it fresh, to keep challenging the players. And now they've kind of gotten to this point where there's like 55 idols in play, and fake idols, and idols that are only good for like a certain amount of tribal councils. It doesn't matter. I know you don't watch Survivor. My point is that I went into Restaurant Wars, and when they were like, we're tweaking it a little bit this year, I was just like, come on. This is one of the few good things.
It's pure.
It's the World Series, man. It's just like, you got to have front of the house.
Get rid of the
You got to have a moment where somebody fucks up front of the house. You got to have somebody who's really good at front of the house.
You got to have the one person who's like, I bought candles for the restaurant.
Yeah.
Come on.
And instead they cooked at Core.
By Claire Smith.
Claire Smith, who
3-star
was,
Michelin.
and I think you could make the argument that Buddha is this like inflection point where Buddha's not only an incredibly talented chef, he is a masterful top chef player.
What he's done in the last 2 weeks is breathtaking in terms of just separating from the past.
Did you notice that a couple weeks ago, he casually mentioned that he brought $1,000 worth of molds with him to Top Chef?
Yeah.
I mean, he's playing a different game than some of these other chefs are, where like Tom is like, I would make tomatoes twice. I mean,
but he's also, that was great, by the way. I do want to acknowledge your German accent. It's not just that, it's that how he is using the show, not just how the show is using him, in that he is relatively young and has hopped around. He worked for Claire Smith at Restaurant Gordon Ramsay in London. He's done the staging and the educating, and he's working at this sort of, I mean, I haven't lived in New York in a few years, but there's this like weird caviar restaurant on the Upper East Side that he's the chef at. But really what he's doing is he's making himself. He's using this as a opportunity. Like a lot of the chefs, you know, have had restaurants or have had success, and someone talked them into this, or they want
like
to expand.
Amar and Nicole, they're kind of maybe in the back end of the back half of their careers or whatever, but they're trying again. Yeah.
Buddha is like, this is my career. Like he intentionally did it 2 years in a row because he knows what it is doing for him as a springboard, and he knows this is his skill set. And his skill set, again, like Sarah is amazing on this show, and I love that she's made it this far. And I'm also really interested in the fact that a lot of that Amar is still on the show, because you sort of discount them because they're like, well, they've become TV personalities, but their unique set of skills is really aligned with this. But like Sarah is successful regardless because she has her fiefdom and she has a successful restaurant in it, right? Buddha is empire building for the future. I don't think he wants to just have like a neighborhood restaurant. But he is a victorious brand.
But could Buddha become like the Matt Amodio of Top Chef? Like, could Buddha do something? Like, Top Chef doesn't typically like have goats. Like, they have great seasons by people. There's like people who are legendary because they've been on a couple of times. They have people who have been amazing performers. But Buddha's Buddha seems to be getting the champion cut, at least to me.
Yeah.
And is on a run right now, which would put him going essentially back to back.
I'm really interested in that. I'm not ready to crown him yet.
I'm not, and I know that they can do the finale, and they can be like, the finale is brought to you by Chipotle, where you'll make a burrito bowl. And
did you see the Ritz crackers still hanging out in the stew room? When we get closer to the end of the season, I would like to talk about like what his arc is, because there are a couple that have been a couple paths to either success or contentment or whatever taken by past Top Chef champions, and a lot of them have reached a place where it's like, I don't want to cook in restaurants.
Yeah.
Like I want to be on TV and be like Brooke or Richard Blaze. Like I'll have my hand in a couple places, but I'll be on TV and I'll empire build and I'll have a happier, healthier balance in my life. But then there's Kwame, who didn't win, but then came back as a judge and has written books and is a cultural force, but also very intentionally has opened a restaurant at Lincoln Center in New York that was just named the best restaurant in New York City. That old brick and mortar kind of thing clearly still matters.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Buddha's on that path or not. But the thing that I think we should talk...
Well, here's the controversial
part.
So Restaurant Wars was this week. Buddha won Restaurant Wars. But that's not what I think people are talking about after Restaurant Wars. What's different is that they made it into what is traditionally like each team is responsible for an entire restaurant. The decor, the vibe, the staffing, like how the staff interacts with the diners, the seating, the hosting, and then also service in front and the cooking.
Mm-hmm.
In this, they made it largely, these people are all cooking in front of us at a chef's table, and everything else is being more or less handled by the Claire Smith team.
By the staff of a 3-star Michelin restaurant.
Now, I would say Buddha's United Kingdom team, I think it was called, they
United
obviously...
Kitchen or something?
Yeah, whatever.
UK, the UK.
They had like a more comprehensive idea, or they have a more total conception of their idea, and they interacted much more deeply with staff, and obviously had like a Bible to give them about how to like prepare food, how to deliver the food and everything. And Roots, the team that lost, was like a little bit more like, we're cooking from our culinary roots and we're just going to throw together these 5 dishes. But it's huge that this whole front of the house part, which has always traditionally been a restaurant wars thing, was removed. And I thought it was cool. You know, I know that I'm saying like, oh, I think they're changing too much stuff about game shows, but I did think it was cool. I just think it really played to the people like Buddha's skills.
Yeah, I thought it was a huge mistake in terms of robbing us of something. Watching the chefs, particularly on this Global All-Star season, cook has been great. It's going to be good.
Yeah.
But this was a normal challenge. This did not feel like Restaurant Wars. It felt like this week you're taking over the kitchen of a 3-star restaurant and you're going to serve the guests. That's just week 8 or whatever. It was not special for that reason, and it did not change the pressure on them. What it did instead was, once again, there's these weeks where you're like, have any of you seen Top Chef, let alone won it?
She's like, I'm going to make tortellini.
It's just not even that. It's just like, our theme is going to be no theme. We just all had backgrounds.
Yeah.
You lost. It was over. So that drama was already gone.
And then you left your vegetables at the store.
I mean, but already they lost. And then they lost again because we saw they didn't even have their basket of food. But like, so then the rest of the episode was really just, is Buddha taking on too much? And the answer was very quickly no.
Yeah.
And then it was over. So it robbed us of something, I think, from that regard. Watching them cook at a high level is never going to be a bad
It's also,
thing.
I would say, I don't think Buddha would have been doing front of the house, but I would say one of the things you can see over the course of the season is Buddha does not like to be criticized.
No.
And so if he had been confronted with, hey, we've been waiting for our food, or is there like more jus that's supposed to come on this lamb, or, you know, what that was Ali's, right? Like,
yes, that was and Tom got up.
Yeah. And Tom got up to inspect it, which I also thought was a bit odd. I mean, I don't imagine you can do that at Kraft, right?
We should try it. I'm sure he'd love it because Tom seems warm and cuddly too.
Okay, so I was into the twist, but am a little bit of a, you know, I'm nervous about like where everything is going because everybody keeps changing everything on me. And if I'm watching these shows,
it was an odd misstep for a show that historically over 20 seasons has learned from its mistakes of breaking things that weren't of fixing things that aren't broken. You know, like famously with the finale that turned into Iron Chef, and they were like, nope, not doing that again.
And you didn't like it. You didn't like the way they set up Restaurant Wars.
I enjoyed the episode, but I thought it was a mistake for the what the game is.
All right, McMullen.
What did Kai? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Team Andy. I think there was not enough stress. Everything went too smoothly. There was no incompetent waiters or staff.
Yeah.
There was no like, oh shit, we have like this table set down. You haven't gone and greeted them yet. You haven't like talked to the like judges. I guess the critic twist.
We should talk
It was
about that.
cool, but it was more like he was just a delightful character. He didn't wind up like.
If I could have, I just want to be more like that guy.
And that guy has a sick life.
Immaculate swag.
Amazing look.
Yeah.
And then just like seems to just be delighted by London's culinary offerings.
He's like, that's delightful, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, he's just so excited when
It's
he
like,
came.
oh, delicious.
Yeah. I was like, that's great. What a life.
That's quite good, isn't it? Great.
Do you think that though, like some of that front of the house stuff to me sometimes feels like when they're like, well, you've gotten this far and now we're going to have you do a Minions challenge and that's going to somehow eliminate one of our guests. It's like front of the house to me. I get why it's important in restaurants, but it's called Top Chef, not Top Host.
First of all, this is great podcasting. I'm really impressed by this.
Yes, but like keeping with this Minions example, it's like if you're being a chef, then you're probably working a restaurant and you should know how a restaurant works from top to bottom.
It's true.
And I think that's interesting to the viewer too, that being, and it does speak to the larger mission of Top Chef. It even dovetails with what we were saying about Buddha's future, which is that they have to do more than what they did the other week, which was, you know, shuck 12 oysters and also peel and devein these shrimp. Like you have to have those skills and management skills.
I thought that was awesome though.
Yeah, that was a great challenge.
But
The Mise en Place Fast and the Furious challenge.
That was
Fast
fun.
and Furious, Jesus Christ, that was a weak point for me. But also, it was a weak point because I like that as a quickfire. And then the fact that they were just trapped in the studio again, that felt like, do that in the COVID years, guys. You're in London. But to the point here, like we saw a little bit of the not seeing the big picture, both in the poor concept for the whole restaurant, but also the way they were like, let's make it easy on ourselves by only seating 6 people in the beginning.
Right.
But that never came back to bite anyone because
overwhelmed.
the judges just swanned right into their chef's table. They weren't made to wait at the host stand, so they didn't feel the effect of that.
That's why I think they brought the critic in, was that on the
maybe.
off chance that the critic's food didn't come. And I think he did say like, oh, it's been paced
They
weird.
were like, there's a long gap between the
first and second courses.
But you know who can make a long gap between courses disappear? The fucking top flight staff of a world-class restaurant.
Right.
Yeah.
Who's walking around covering the chef's asses. And like the head waiter who came down and met with them, I went to her LinkedIn page and she's like, I make it my mission to travel the world and work in the finest restaurants and elevate the customer experience. So, they got a few extra splashes of Turlato. You know what I mean? Like they were fine.
Yeah,
they were doing it.
It didn't touch the judges. They were inoculated from the actual experience of the challenge.
All things being equal, do you agree with me about Buddha's like the Vegas favorite?
I would say it's between Buddha and Amir right now.
Amar.
Yeah.
Amar's role, I'm stunned by Amar in this season. Like I think I slept on him in his California season, and because he's just like, I'm a nice guy, like you kind of forget.
I love
that
that
he can crush it.
He's like obviously like every's favorite dude.
He seems like a great guy. He's opening in DTLA. We should go.
Oh. Okay.
But he also has that like veteran presence where he's just like, you guys, it's on me. But that he's like, he is able to be a good teammate and a good competitor and crush it both like in terms of the practical, but also the conceptual is just really impressive.
Yeah, I mean, another thing with this episode is like when the teams were picked and it was Amar, Buddha, Sarah, and Ali. It's like, that's done.
I would have liked to have seen Tom on Buddha's team just to see what would have happened with those two, because Tom
is chaos energy now.
Yeah.
Like, I can't believe Tom's still on the show. I don't know if you guys are Last Chance Kitcheners, but I think and I'm not going to spoil what's happening, but I think Charbel.
You think Charbel's coming back?
Yeah.
And I think that the Charbel Ali, not to lump them in because they were on the same version of Top Chef in the Middle East and North Africa, but like, I think those guys are serious.
They haven't had a challenge in a minute that was able to really like showcase their skills. I feel like they've kind of had a couple in a row that Buddha and Amar have been a little bit more,
Not that this is a battle for the soul of Top Chef, the most important election of our lifetimes, but if it was like a Buddha Amar finale, considering what, right? But if it came down, who knows? Maybe they're going to change that too. But if it was, and they were at least the two, leading contenders, let's say, I'm not sure who the third would be in this scenario. That would be really interesting because the version of what the show seems to be doing this season favors Buddha 1,000,000% in terms of like the emphasis on fine dining and execution and creativity.
Yeah, because sometimes they're like, "Oh, we want you to cook from the heart. Like, why are you being so technical?" And it's like this season they seem to be like, "Buddha, you're fucking killing it."
I think this season is a little bit more meta overall.
Yeah.
Just because it's an all-star.
Yeah,
and they've all done it before.
Yeah, they're pushing each other. It's good.
But it is. If you had polled me, which you monsters didn't, and I was here at the beginning of the season, I would have. And if we had done like broadly, like who's the bottom trio?
Yeah.
And I apologize for this. I was wrong. I would have thought Amar and Sarah would have been in the bottom. Not because they're not great chefs or great competitors, but because I was like, oh, we're going to be on the fucking it's a Michelin season.
Yeah, this show has really gotten rid of people who try to do things like that either they don't have the time to do. So like Nicole trying to do all this fresh pasta that didn't work out. Dawn, obviously.
Or Dawn being like, I'm going to figure it out as I go.
You can't figure out.
You can't do it this season.
We can wrap it up there. I do want to say this is like the hour plus moment that it's not really like timely recommendation, but I've been watching Jury Duty
on
Freevee.
I love Jury Duty.
And Jury Duty is the funniest show I've seen since Southside, and it is like probably my favorite thing that I've seen this season.
It's really good.
Yeah.
It's really fun.
Favorite new show.
So this is what you guys were doing instead of just interviewing me about my thoughts on Top Chef. Okay. Well, we can hash this out at dinner.
Thanks for listening. Thanks to Kaya McMullen for weighing in on Top Chef and for scoring a dinner at Amar's DTLA restaurant.
And producing The Watch.
Yeah. We'll be back on Sunday night after Succession. It's a doozy. And then we'll be back next week with, maybe some cross-continental podcasting, I guess.
Go Sixers.